Hello and welcome to the Shiny New Object podcast. This week the podcast's a bit different. It was recorded live at the IPA at an event called Is Creativity Dead that was put on by previous guest Patrick Collister, who runs Directory Magazine. The interview was with a lad called Jeremy Waite, who is the Chief Strategy Officer for IBM Watson. Very fancy, his second appearance on the show. But before we jump into that, I would like to take a moment to thank our sponsor, Khoros. Khoros was recently born after the coming together of Spredfast and Lithium. Khoros is a technology software company that has over 15 years of leadership in marketing, care and communities. And Khoros now offers one platform that unites marketing and care and helps brands create customers for life. Awesome. Their website is khoros.com, which is KHOROS.com. So please go and check those guys out and tell them I said hi. Very grateful to the lads supporting this podcast. It's massively appreciated. So on with the show. Hello and welcome to the Shiny New Object podcast. My name is Tom Ollerton and this is a podcast about the future of marketing. Every week I get to interview someone who's inspirational, cool, funny, engaging, or maybe just one of those. And this week is no different. We have Jeremy Waite, who is the Chief Strategy Officer of IBM Watson. And it's his second appearance on the show. The first one last year was incredibly popular. And we're going to do things a little bit differently. Normally I ask some kind of getting to know you questions, but we did them all last year, so that'd be kind of weird if we did them again. But what we're going to do is, when you've introduced yourself, we're going to jump into what your shiny new object is, okay. And then we'll go from there. And if we're going to go massively off piste and ask questions, we can do that. But first of all, could you all just say hello to prove this is live? Hello. Beautiful. Jeremy?
I'm also not feeling great and I'm on a shitload of drugs and we've just had a lot of Malbec, so this could go absolutely anywhere.
Rock and roll, man. All right, Jim Morrison, let the room know who you are.
I'm the Chief Strategy Officer of IBM Watson. Written a few books and I don't know if you want to get into this or not, being the new parent that you are. I joined IBM because Watson AI, that also powers all of our ad business, saved the life of my twins. And I have a podcast called 10 Words where I interview all kinds of interesting people, from Taylor Swift and Jerry Seinfeld to people who are changing the world with big ideas, small words and short sentences. And I have a new thing coming out that's a little bit shiny that I've not spoke to anybody about yet, which tonight will be the first night we do that.
Ooh. Yeah. Still bother, mate. That's fine.
Can we just
come on,
that?
What is the shiny new object? Tell us.
Okay, so the thing is, we've just before the podcast came on, we saw a bunch of really interesting videos. We could talk all night about all the really interesting creative and what's amazing and how the industry's going forward. I'm a big believer the world's going to change more over the next 3 or 4 years than it has over the last 20. If we want to get into the technology side of that, I'm perfectly happy to do that. But I also think, and I wasn't planning on mentioning this, but I think we've also got a big responsibility given what we just saw on a lot of the ads, which is how do we get people to, engage with our stuff? That's our jobs, right? To be more creative. And I don't know if any of you are aware, there's a guy called Jeff Hammerbacher. He was the guy that actually built the news feed. Chris Cox just left Facebook, and Jeff Hammerbacher was the data scientist that did the algorithm for the news feed. And he left just before the IPO and left an absolute shit ton of money on the table. And no one could understand why. And there was an interview he gave, I think to Emily Chang, I think it was, at Bloomberg West, before it was Bloomberg Technology. And she said, Jeff, why did you leave to do this next new shiny thing you're about to do? And he said this famous quote that became, "It sucks that the greatest minds of my generation are trying to get people to click more ads." So where I'd like this to go, and with all respect to all the ad people in the room, and that's my background as well, but I also think we've got a big responsibility to use technology in a really cool way, right? So my new book that maybe we could dig into if you're interested or not, is going to be called Remixed, and it's about how you take old ideas to create new media, and we put too much emphasis on original content that I think is killing the industry. And a lot of people give companies like ours and Watson obscene amounts of money for AI to solve their problems, which we can talk about that as well. But we have people problems. We don't have technology problems. So take that wherever you will.
Right. So you're saying the problem is. No, just do the whole podcast in 2 minutes. It's fine, don't worry. So you're saying that we put ourselves under too much pressure to come up with new when remixing the old is good enough, right? So I would push you ever so slightly on that and say, I don't need to see another car advert with a car driving down a road. In fact, I saw an advert on the tube the other day, and it was a red car made by some manufacturer, and it said something like, "This car's cool" or "exciting to drive." And I have literally been looking at that advert for ever since I've understand what adverts are. So aren't we doing that already? Aren't we just repeating old formats? Whether it's shampoo adverts where people are flicking their hair, or if it's antibacterial is getting rid of 99.9% of germs. Maybe they should try it a bit harder, that kind of stuff.
Gosh, where do we start with all of that? So there was a couple of things that Patrick showed that just struck my mind. Of all of those clips, there was one, and I can't remember which one it was, and it was talking about mood, and like what mood people are in. You talk about personalization, right message, right time. We've been doing that for a really long time. That's not easy, but the problem is now nobody wants to give any data to marketers at all, ever. Like 55, 60%, whatever. 90% of most consumer transactions are all dark. It's all shared privately. That's a massive problem. We're trying to find more creative ways to get people to click more ads. But where it becomes really interesting for me, which is also an ethical and a moral discussion around AI and creativity and how you remix old ideas, is how do you understand what mood somebody was in within the last couple of seconds or minutes? And that's where an AI could help understand the mood of an audience and then trigger completely different content, or even create a brand new piece of content from scratch on its own. Now that also creates the dilemma of like, shit, what does that mean for humans now? Are we all, as an industry, are the creatives fucked? Wimbledon, I don't know if any of you saw Wimbledon this year, if you've seen the highlights. 100% of all the highlights on Wimbledon now are done by AI, with no human involvement whatsoever. It's all Watson. Watches the game, understands the mood of the audience, the mood of the player, the tone of voice in the press conference, how's Murray going to play against Nadal, judges how they're going to play, what the outcome's likely to be, edits the entire highlight package on his own based upon a Pixar-type template, and then kicks it out. So AI is doing amazing things in creativity. Now, what does that mean for the future of us when we're trying to understand how technology can understand the mood that you was in 5 minutes ago, but just because you can, does that mean that you should? So that's where this whole idea of good humans and machines working together and not just dumping it all on ad tech is, in my mind, we get into dangerous territory when we let the machines be creative.
So I would argue that I don't think IBM Watson is being creative in that instance. It is remixing pre-existing content to a template that a human has told it to remix it to. Mm-hmm. Yes, it's pulling the signals, so when the volume of the crowd hits a certain point, it knows that it should probably edit a 2 or second cut around that, and then it can drop it in to what's fundamentally a template. And I work for a business called Automated Creative. In fact, that's my business. I don't work for my fictional own boss. We experiment with artificial intelligence through different suppliers and different technologies, some small, some big. And I'm yet to see an example of a truly creative artificial intelligence, really at all. And I'm yet to see an example of even a slightly creative AI that I would let a brand go anywhere near. So I think that I want to debate the difference between an AI sort of replicating some human tasks and actually generating an idea or actually coming up with something from scratch.
It's a really good point, and we can violently agree on this issue. Right. I'm sorry, there's no debate.
What does a violent agreement look like?
So the thing is that when you think about it, so if we're not supposed to use the term artificial intelligence at IBM. We're supposed to talk about the term augmented intelligence. So all the media training is about how we augment human behavior to help machines, augment the... But really the best way to look at it, which is what Tom's talking about, is it's an IA, not an AI. It's an intelligent assistant that helps you do your job faster, right? So the vast majority of us, I guess most of us in a room, when you think about a lot of the crap you get bogged down with on a daily basis, we waste on average about 19.5% of our time just searching for stuff that helps us do our jobs. We're just searching for information to help us do our jobs. So with a case like Wimbledon, they've got this huge problem because they they've got 70 million fans that are only active for a couple of weeks of the year. And for most of the rest of the year, they're not active at all. So they actually have quite a small team proportionally. They're going through this massive digital transformation. They want to become a media company, not be known for being a championships. And this small creative team that had to do all the boring templated stuff, now AI, or this IA comes in, takes all of that off of them, and now they can be super spontaneous. They can create whatever's happened. They can do better social, build better videos. They can respond to something that happened that morning in the crowd, and they were never able to do that before. And the bit where this is interesting, and this is where technology can help, and a lot of boardrooms, maybe not us in the room, but a lot of the boardrooms haven't quite understood what AI can do and what it can't do, is you look at something like digital transformation for a brand like Wimbledon that's invested so heavily in AI and Watson. And for the most part, we do an awful lot of research, and what we're seeing is that 85% of digital transformation projects fail. You know, most of the jobs that we work on for most of our clients over the long term, 85% fail. So when you've got a 15% success rate, which is like 2% higher than the odds of gambling in a casino, and it's our jobs to build creative that helps engage and customer and fan experiences and all of that, it's like, I guess really what I'm trying to say is we ask too much of technology, not enough of ourselves. And Watson can do creative things, but people are thinking like this AI is going to take over like it's some general intelligence. It's going to build all of our ads. It's going to create movie trailers. It's going to... And it's not, and it shouldn't.
So let's jump back to Remixing the book and the world exclusive that you've dropped on us today. So that's a deal you've signed now. That's gonna your it's the third book, I think. So
it's the fourth book because the third one is stuck in a massive lawsuit with Uber, along with like 25,000 other companies.
What can you tell us that isn't going to end up?
Let me tell you where this came from. I'll tell you the context is Gary Vaynerchuk being the lovely guy and the douche that he is. We'll come back to him in a second. Something happened not long ago in the office, and I was speaking to one of our creatives, and she's pretty young. And you know when you look at like experience in the boardroom and creativity and what you've done and your creds. I used to own a design agency years ago, and it was all about what you've done. And there's almost this hierarchy that goes on of what you can say and what you can't say. And first of all, we started to see a lot of young people that were being inspired by all the Gary V's and and Sinex kind of start with why. And all of a sudden, they're going out trying to change the world. And then you post something on LinkedIn, which they think is freaking awesome. And they're completely made, they've got 400 likes for the first time ever. And then some douche from our industry is like, well, that was shit. We saw that at Cannes 3 years ago. Did you not know that story's been done half a dozen times? And honestly, the amount of times I've seen respectful people in the industry almost put people back in their box because they were so desperate to try and create what they thought was original, but actually it was just remixed from a shitload of other stuff that we've seen over and over and over again, just they didn't know. And the phrase that one of the ladies said to me when I was talking to her, she said, I said, why are you so down? And there's, you talk about anxiety and stress in the boardroom, big fan of mental health and executives and where all of that goes. And she said, I just feel like I'm a plain guppy in a tank of tropical fish. And it's kind of funny, right? But it broke my heart because there was someone with just the most beautiful intent in the world. And she just literally came off the back of a Simon Sinek conference. It was all, we're all fired up. The goal in business isn't to sell to people who need what we have. It's to work with people who believe what we believe. We can change the world and blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden, the industry almost en masse with all the comments were just brutal. And she was so hung up on the idea of being original instead of thinking, actually, what if I just took what's gone on before and remixed it to a different audience with my personality and my spin and showed it in a way that's never been seen before? Like Brian Cox does, right, on TV, take science to mainstream audience on BBC Two. So in 2008, 11 years ago, I was speaking to Gary Vaynerchuk about a lot of this, and his phrase, which stuck with me ever since, was, the future actually belongs to the DJs. Which I thought is awesome because I'm a massive dance music fan. So what does that mean? And he said, it's the people that just remix existing content. They just take old media and remix it in a different way and add their own thing, and then they go off and create something new. And that idea of the future belonging to the DJs, we can talk about the transformation of the DJs in a sec. But I like what that means. There's almost something empowering within that, about I don't have to be so hung up about the 3% of the superstars that have got the posters around these buildings. as opposed to we can all do that, right? And it can unlock some sort of creativity in everyone if there's less stigma to it. And I think about guys like Stephen B. Johnson. You want to see where the future's going? Look where people are having the most fun. Chris Dixon from Andreessen Horowitz. He's like, the future of work for the rest of us in 10 years is just going to be what people are doing for fun now, really smart people at the weekends. So we don't talk about that enough.
So we've got the kind of big headline, the future belongs to the DJs. I think that every time a teenager listens to a DJ, a rock star dies, which is a shame. But we're different sides of the fence here. So you've got these kind of big, successful marketing book kind of, sort of tweets, if you like. And then you've got IBM Watson with all of its power that you can unleash with several £1 million or a big brand. But yet you're speaking to people in this room, people in the industry about, no, you don't need to be original. You don't need to do something. You don't need to be first. You need to remix things in a way that's yours, that helps you tell yours or someone else's story, right?
Okay.
So how does someone in this room who is feels like a bit like a guppy in a fish tank take advantage of Gary Vee's big, bold statement and technology like yours that they can't afford?
Okay, yeah, thanks for that. That is absolutely not true, but thanks for the... People used to say we're like you've got to have $1 million in a year to spend before you can afford Watson coming in.
Do you have a discount code?
Let me give you an example about it. This is like, I wrote a shitload of notes and none of these are ever going to come into play at all. I spoke to a guy that was a chief exec of a very big company that was using Watson to grow his tomatoes. He grows the really fucking huge tomatoes that go and win shows at kind of village fetes and stuff. And he was using a Watson API with the weather company to try and grow these perfect tomatoes. And he's just got a pay-as-you-go for 150 quid a month on his card. And he was pulling in all of these APIs, basically using Watson to try and create this, in what his mind was this thing of beauty. There's a lot of stigma around AI like this, that it's really just a toolbox. That's all it is. It's nothing to do with money at all. Watson itself is super, super, super cheap. The money is in the people to make a lot of this work, right? But it's just a toolbox of 50 different commands that just helps you to do stuff faster. Personality insights, tone analyzer, sentiment analysis, voice to text, speech recognition, image recognition on Instagram that can predict who's suffering with whatever mental illness. The cost of the technology is incredibly cheap. So the people doing amazing stuff with it, and this is where creativity comes in, is how do you take those very, very cheap APIs, which is a completely open ecosystem, by the way. Anyone in the room, this isn't an ad, I don't work in sales, you could go on ibm.com/Watson now and access any API, plug it into your campaign and start messing with it tomorrow for free, for no cost at all. But the success of that is down to how you remix those things to do something that maybe someone's done something like it before, but maybe not in your industry, right? So how do you take different bits of data and plug them together? And I think the reason that's so important today, and I think what freaks us out, is when you consider that 90% of all the data in the world was created in the last 12 months, it's no wonder, right, that 4 out of 5 professionals and business execs in our industry are just completely overwhelmed by the challenges their business is going to go through over the next 5 years. In fact, a data scientist told me the other day, if you look at all the data that we capture, which we're trying to make sense of to then sell them more stuff or inspire them and educate them, if you actually printed out the amount of data that we capture on a sheet of A4 paper, in type size 10, double-sided on a sheet of A4, it would be a stack of paper that reaches to the moon 3 times every single day. And yet our job is to make sense of all of that shit on a daily basis. So obviously, that's where an AI can help. You do your job faster. But it's still up to you to infuse whatever empathy, emotion, creativity to be able to curate that thing and not create necessarily something brand new.
So where do you stand on this topic? And I just can't remember the names of the people, but essentially there was a chap who created a GAN, which is a generative adversarial network, which is basically 2 AIs that compete with each other to come to form an agreement about what something is, right? So I'm not going to get stuck into that, but what this guy did was he fed a GAN with lots of different images of art, right? Whether it's Renaissance art or whatever. And then using his GAN, he would generate a new version, right? So you're training the AI, if you like, what Renaissance art looks like, and so therefore there was this generative or creative expression of what the code thought this thing was. Then he put it on like GitHub or whatever, and then shared it and said, hey, look at this cool thing I've done. And then I think there's a collective of French artists called Obvious said, thanks mate, I'm going to do that. But they were like way more PR savvy and did a deal with Christie's to sell the first ever piece of AI art, which it absolutely wasn't, but for as far as Christie's marketing department was concerned, it was. And I think it was listed at 10 grand and went for 500. So that is absolutely a remix. It's not only a remix of the art that they fed the AI, it's almost like a lift really, or a copy or a cover of that person's code. So the original artist got absolutely niche for writing the code in the first place, and whereas Obvious, I think that's what they're called, walked away with 500 grand. So are they the DJ?
I don't know what you guys in the room think, but it feels to me like this isn't a new argument. It feels like we've been talking about this in various guises for a really long time. The people that are going to feature in the book are going to be people like any David Bowie fans around. You know, you look at cut-up techniques of what he used to do in the 70s, right? You know, he used to use computer programs and he'd feed in, you know, all sorts of videos and film footage and poetry and newspaper headlines and stuff. He'd feed it into a computer and then it'd just get all of these completely random lines that then end up on Life on Mars or something. Stole the idea of the cut-up technique, I think, from William S. Burroughs, who's the guy that invented the phrase heavy metal. And all he used to do was hacksaw books in half, put the pages back to front, and then read the new sentences. And he created a brand new thing. You know, you look at, you know, Led Zeppelin going all the way back, who stole a lot of stuff. You look at Dylan, you know, fucking hell, Dylan, like a Nobel laureate, one of the best wordsmiths of our generation. We like Nobel Prize winners at IBM. We have 6 in our research team to get that in. His original album had 11 fucking covers, and yet he's this original artist. He just remixed stuff. In fact, there's a line, I don't know if I've still got it from the book, because, you know, obviously Steve Jobs' his hero. Dylan was inspired by a guy called Woody Guthrie, and he said, whenever you're doing a new thing, the words are the important thing. Don't worry about the tune. You take a tune, you sing high when they sing low, you sing fast when they sing slow, and you've got a new tune. And that's it. And that's basically how you go and create a new thing. A lot of DJs like Armin van Buuren, Martin Garrix, a lot of the new guys coming through, you know, are using a similar type of mechanic just to take something old and create something new. I don't know that the discussion is around IP and ownership, but there's an interesting discussion around this that maybe we could get into if we have time left. The famous quote that everyone throws at me when I started coming up with this idea was Steve Jobs. Good artists copy, great artists steal, right? And he's like, oh, we've been shameless at stealing at Apple and Xerox PARC, right? All of that. This is what Picasso's... First of all, Picasso never ever said that. That was just Steve Jobs being Steve Jobs. And he went to Xerox PARC and everyone's like, oh, you stole the thing? You know, the mouse with the UX and everything. But it was actually a 3-button mouse that cost $300. But for him to turn that into a 1-button mouse with an elegant interface that cost $15 was an incredibly difficult creative problem to solve. So first of all, you've got this idea of we steal from people to create beautiful things. That inspired Steve Jobs to do the thing. Fast forward to 2011, and he's trying to destroy Samsung for patent infringement. Right? He's suing him for $2 billion. And I think the quote that he came up with was something like, I'm going to destroy Android because it's a stolen product. I'm willing to go thermonuclear war on this. And you're like, for fuck's sake, man. It's like, it's okay to steal and remix other people's stuff, just don't steal from me, right? And we register like 9,000 patents a year. This idea of IP and ownership versus how do we just give stuff to the community to build upon, and how much ownership do we really have over that idea that has been respun from, oh shit, we could go back. Henry Ford didn't invent the production lines. Edison didn't invent the light bulb. The Apple store is modelled on Josiah Wedgwood's store from 1809, literally an exact carbon copy. You can get 2 transparencies and put them on top of each other. It's a perfect, even the language, mass market luxury with Josiah Wedgwood. Everything's been stolen from a previous generation.
So what's next, right? So you are arguably working with one of the best AIs or IAs around that has a creative capacity. We've seen IBM Watson essentially try to recreate a Beatles song, which as a Beatles fan was just a fucking travesty. They would never do anything like that. But anyway, it's fine. PR is good, I suppose. And you know, we see the create create horror movie sequences and stuff. So
Morgan, yeah.
So you're definitely up there. There's got to be 3 or 4 of you who are really defining what the future of creativity is with using these tools, right? And this lot, the rest of us, are we're mostly humans at desks. So what's going to happen is, do you think that the big tech is going to pull away, or are we going to see a new type of creative? Are we going to be teaching old dogs new tricks, or are we going to be hiring like AI juniors or IA juniors? How do you see the next 5 years playing out in terms of the type of creative roles we're going to see?
So the best thing that I've seen, that if I'd encourage you guys to go and have a look at it. This isn't an IBM pitch at all, but there's no one else doing this at the moment. I think this is going to be the future of how we're going to be doing our jobs. Like that Chris Dixon quote, the future for work for the rest of us in 10 years is what smart people are doing at the weekends. There's something called Project Debater. I don't know if anyone saw it. We released it at CES. It was at Think this year. So the idea is that, in 1997, Watson did interesting things with Garry Kasparov, and he beat the Grandmaster, and it's a great strategy-based, the chess thing. That happened. That then goes on to become Jeopardy. We win arguably the world's most complicated game show on natural language processing. So that's about 2011. So in 2019, we're trying to figure out what is the next generation of that to inspire us to do our jobs better. And what we've come up with for our sins is Project Debater. So we thought, how best to test an IA than against the top debater in the world on a subject that isn't black and white. This isn't chess, or this isn't Jeopardy when you've got a binary answer. This is going to be like, has social media destroyed relationships? Should we ban online gambling or violent video games? Has social media destroyed relationships, or should the public purse fund space exploration? So we take the top debater in the world with no training whatsoever on our AI, and we pit him live on stage against Project Debater. And the audience decides what the subject is. So think about that. It's an AI with no physical training whatsoever to argue live on stage in a presidential-style debate. Now, I'll tell you what happens in like the 2-minute version, but as I'm telling you, think about what that would mean for your jobs, where every time you ask a question, it takes 4 hours sometimes to get an answer from different teams. I've presented elements of this to guys like Martin Sorrell, and he said, what you just demoed in 17 minutes would take my agency 30 days to do, because you're asking it a question, and at 10 million records a second, it's telling you exactly what you need for that segment, that audience, that mood, whatever. So the way that presidential debates work, you're frowning. There's going to be a complicated question at the end of this, so I'm going to keep talking until we run out of time. 4-minute opening, 4-minute rebuttal, 2-minute closing. So the intelligent debater is going to say the thing, Watson has to say an answer, Project Debater, because this one's a female. And then, so that's easy because we can craft that piece of content on our own based upon what the topic is by pulling from 10 billion sentences, blogs, forums, news networks, all that kind of stuff. But then as soon as the debater comes back with yes, but this is what I think, now we've got to start injecting humor and empathy and a whole bunch of other stuff and pauses, because this is winning over the hearts and minds of the audience on our point of view. And then once all of that's happened and there's been a response, we've now got a 2-minute closing statement. The fact that that has happened in 2019 with no training is, and you can watch it online, go and check it out. It's as easy as me and Tom chatting to each other right now. And a computer informed the audience more than the debater on a topic it was never trained on. So what does that mean for your next campaign? What creative should we run? To what segment? Should we run this? Why shouldn't Gillette have done that, right? Why did Nike do this and it won? All of those types of questions, you can now instantly, in 2019, using very cheap APIs, ask it a question like that. It's pretty fucking cool.
You can answer the question. What kind of role? No, I'm joking. Right, we're gonna wrap up. So, thank you. Thanks for making me look relatively good while you talk for half an hour. I appreciate that. Thanks for the gig, Patrick. If people want to get in touch with you, how do you want them to do that?
Twitter or LinkedIn is fine. And can I just say, like, we genuinely, we've got like 30 seconds left.
Make it good, yeah?
Like, we're genuinely going to look back on 2019 and say, we had no idea what we were sat in the middle of. Like, this isn't just some little thing that we've got to innovate and do things faster. We're in the middle of something that's absolutely disrupting the industry. This isn't how do we keep up and do things faster. This is a disruption that's making the complete old way of working, a lot of what we just saw on the screen, absolutely redundant. And most businesses have got no idea yet. 97% of businesses have no idea what to do with AI. 50% of the 6,000 startups last year don't even have AI in them. Most people have got no idea. So massive opportunity to be creative and ethical with some cool stuff.
Most people have no idea, but you do. Jeremy, thank you very much.